I'm Christian Wallace, Senior Consultant at Charcoalblue. I've been working in the performance industry since 1997 when I first started working at Theatre Royal Bath as a casual technician. After a few years working there, I eventually decided to get some training. So I went to Bristol Old Vic Theatre School for a couple of years, did the diploma there, and then eventually becoming the technical manager at the tobacco factory where I spent a couple of years, and then moving on to Sadler's Wells Theatre where I was eventually technical manager there. During my time at Sadler's Wells, I started becoming a lot more involved in sustainability as part of the 2015 refit, where I started realising that we actually need to make a difference as an industry. There was a huge amount of waste that was happening. A lot of the performances were using a lot of materials which were quite frankly just either being thrown in the bin or being shipped from a long way. And then as part of the refurb, there was a lot of work that we had to do to make sure that we weren't just getting rid of our old kit, actually trying to reuse it, trying to repurpose it and move it on. So in 2017 I made the move from being backstage in theatre to becoming a theatre consultant. Ever since then I've really been passionate about trying to make a change, working in sustainability. I was part of the founding members of SIPA, the Sustainability and Production Alliance group. I've been there ever since, and I've now started pushing on a lot of the stuff of my own passions, but also the things we need to start seeing as a difference within the theatre industry, but also within the construction industry.
I'm Elena. I'm a senior design consultant at Charcoalblue. My background lies in architecture and set and costume design. I trained at Bristol Vic Theatre School. From early on, I had a really big love of history, and that's what led me to architecture initially. And there was a sad point in my sort of student career when I realized that I didn't want to build new, because I could see that there's so much built environment around me, and I was studying in Athens, such an old city. And one thing led to another, and I ended up changing careers, going into theatre design. And I suppose there was a pivoting moment there too, when I just felt completely devastated by my set design being torn apart and thrown in a bin. And it sort of made me think again where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, how this can be made better, how can I do something that lasts. And that got me into thinking that there might be something for me in between the theatre industry and the construction industry. And that's how I ended up being a theatre consultant. And while being here and having amazing colleagues that are very passionate about sustainability, I sort of found the group and my voice in it. I do think that being in a collection of people who have the same goal and have the same sort of mindset does allow you to push your ideas forward and be more vocal and more active about it, and try to educate others as well as you're educating yourself, because this is a topic that it's so crucial, it's so important, and we don't know the answers. We're just trying to figure it out on the way. We're not going to get it right in the beginning, but that's what's the important factor about it. That's why we're talking about it.
I'm Amanda. I'm a designer with Charcoalblue. I'd never actually been to theatre before. I actually started front of house in a role when I first started studying in Edinburgh. And I always just remember that experience just being completely like nothing else I'd ever sort of witnessed. You know, suddenly I was around voice artists and pyrotechnics and jewelers and just this whole like array of completely different people that had come from all sorts of backgrounds. So for me, my first impressions of theatre were always with the people that sort of make it. You actually started to realise that there was this huge sort of community of really regular visitors that used to come along to see us, you know, and to see the space and to see what was happening in there. You know, you'd always get the wee grannies that would be saying, oh look, I was in here, last time I was here, I was up here, and you know, that sort of sense of excitement and engagement with not just performance, but with the building itself and the way that everything sort of goes together. So that really got me interested, not only in theatre, but also in that sense of community endeavour, and the way that just space really sort of informs and influences what people get from experience and what it is that they want from it as well. Generally within the sort of the artistic community, we're really, really fantastic at bringing people in from all sorts of backgrounds and really sort of diverse walks of life. So I think the way that sustainability fits into that is that actually what we're seeing is this huge surge in people that are genuinely engaged with the subject. I think that broadly there is an awareness of what's happening, but the way that venues are actually starting to encompass that and the way that they're starting to embody that into the basis of how they're sort of outreaching to these people is really quite inspirational. And actually, like, what we're seeing is that the audience are voting with their feet, and they do actively seek out some way of actually making sense of what is going on and trying to look to our sort of community leaders in how do we challenge this subject, what is it that we can do, and you know, what that is evident in the kinds of performances that we're producing, and it's evident in the way that, you know, audiences as consumers are actually responding to those environments as well.
My name's Dan Roncaroni. I'm an audio-visual consultant with Charcoalblue. I've been with Charcoalblue for about a year now. I first started approaching the topic of sustainability a few years ago in a totally different role within military engineering. The waste created there was absolutely staggering. Moving back into theatre from that engineering role, I saw the sort of maturity of technical theatre, where it's become ever more reliant on incredibly complex pieces of hardware. And I started to see the same pattern emerging, where theatre had to have the latest and greatest technology to achieve the artistic vision, no matter the cost that was imbued in those items. And I really started to wonder why the industry was going that way. Every trade show, there'd be a whole host of new products launched that were only a minor iterative change on what came before. And to create these products, each of these manufacturers would have to totally retool. And the inherent cost in that just became very difficult for me to stomach. And as a system designer, I started wondering why I was okay with this. And as time's gone on, I've started to really interrogate my own designs and the overall design of any theatre system, and I'm keen to try and put sustainability at the forefront of that. Most of us in technical theatre, we'd go, we use loudspeakers, they're made of wood, that's sustainable. But overall, if a manufacturer is making a new model every 6 months and they're retooling every time to make that new model, I don't see how long that can last.
We need to be able to work collectively and understand that we're all in it together. It can't just be a select few that have to start making those decisions. We all need buy-in from everybody, because we're all on the same planet. You know, there is no planet B. Theatre is fantastic at being able to reinvent itself and be able to move things on and keep on adapting, which is absolutely fantastic. The theatre buildings that Charcoalblue are part of designing, we need to make sure that we're working with that too, and actually being able to design those buildings to be sustainable, to giving over to the operators, to the performers, to the technicians, to the artistics, to make sure that they understand how this building works. Obviously, as theatre consultants, we only have a very small influence on that. That is obviously largely down to the structural engineer and the architects to be able to decide on that. But if we can get on that table and actually start talking to them about going, instead of let's using loads and loads of steel, let's use some CLT because it's a sustainable product, rather than using something like steel, which obviously takes huge amounts of carbon to produce.
We're at this very privileged position to be the bridge between theatre makers, organisations and the construction sector. So the fact that we're in a position of we can influence at a very early stage and talk to those teams, talk to our teams, and make sure that if the intention is already there to look at sustainable methods, or whether that's a new build environment, whether it's a refurbishment or restoration of a theatre, that it's actually viable.
Obviously cost is going to be a top priority, and at the moment the sad truth is to make it more sustainable does cost more money. There needs to be more research and more data to show the long run it's going to be better. It's not just better for the environment, it's also going to be better for lower running costs. You know, the cost of LED, that brings down electricity bills, but it brings down heating and cooling as well. So yes, there's large upfront costs, but actually in terms of operation, it's very, very difficult trying to balance those two things together, because obviously a construction cost is completely different to an operational cost. So it's engaging as early as possible and what I'm trying to do within Charcoalblue is making sure that we're all speaking the same language. We're not saying we all need to be experts, because we don't. Just having an understanding and having a thought process of going, everything we do, everything that we make, everything that we produce, even getting up in the morning, we're producing carbon. So we have to acknowledge the fact that we're always going to be producing carbon, but it's how much we can obviously reduce by, and then how much actually can we start taking back out of the atmosphere by planting more trees, by not doing extra carbon hungry activities.
By nature, theatres will always have a carbon footprint. There's no way, there's no doubt that this is still going to be happening. We're only trying to find ways to reduce this and make sure that we are leading this conversation. It's not just us trying to inform or trying to educate, because that's not our position necessarily to do it. We are also learning in the process. It's about having those discussions early on.
We've got both a professional and a personal capacity in which we can make change. Professionally, we can really start to assess the manufacturers we look to, the overall economics of our designs, be that set, be that AV, be that lighting. I think as long as at every step of the process within a theatrical design or a live concert or any form of entertainment, we start balancing the risk versus reward. I think that's the real answer. I can't provide a hard and fast answer to solve this issue, but as long as it's at the forefront of every conversation, I think that is the only way forward.
The construction industry is able to actually log and create a lot of data and use that data to understand how much carbon is going into quite literally everything that is being obviously designed and then built. Theatre, on the other hand, has to make do amend a lot of the time. There are obviously some larger organisations within theatre that are starting to make that process and understand how much carbon is going in, creating carbon calculators. There are some talks about how much that can actually then be put into the theatre system, so everyone is able to use that. One of the silver linings of the pandemic is the fact that it actually has brought the theatre industry together to have a look at that and understand what can we do, how can we make that work, how can we work together? Because there are some times where theatres are very, very insular and will not share, which to me is crazy. When I was at Sadler's Wells, we were always, do you know what, here we are, we're doing something. Anyone else want to try it as well? Because we were in a position where we had that capital to be able to make some research, be able to do some stuff and then pass that on. There has to be more of that within theatre, because sometimes it doesn't always happen. So if the leading theatres within the country are able to do that, hopefully they can pass that data on and start using it.
As soon as we can get that conversation, so it's right at the epicenter, at the beginning of every single project we do, that will eventually evoke change, and it will be taken for granted that we have made such a huge leap forwards in our way of thinking and in the way that we progress into the future.
Theatre in the future, with genuine collaboration and actual sharing of knowledge and expertise and methods of trying to find solutions to problems, whether that is ventilation strategies or water reuse or even just having bees on the rooftops. That sort of knowledge should stay open to everybody. It has to be a priority. That's what I want to see in the future. That's what we're aiming for. We need this genuine openness in sharing resources and making sure that we learn from each other, and that essentially everyone is on the same page from day one.
I am optimistic. We're definitely going to move in the right direction. The creation of the Theatre Green Book, a lot of people understanding that we need to make those changes, that means that we are going to start making those changes. It's going to be slow. We're not going to see it, any massive changes in the next couple of years. It's going to be 5, 10, 15 years times that we're going to be able to do that. There is technology evolving. We are going to eventually get there, but we just need to keep on hammering at it. And actually, as theatre makers, theatre designers, audience members, we're all in it together. We all want to make that happen, but we are going to have to come to the realisation that touring productions is still going to happen. We are still going to have to move around the country, move around Europe, international. But if we can work out ways to make it as less carbon hungry as possible, that's a way forward on that front.
I think that imagination is sort of the only thing holding us back now in terms of creating spaces. We've got to the point where with technology you can film an entire TV series without the cast ever going to site. You know, the location shoots are done by a small group of videographers. The trickle-down effect of that technology, I hope, will lead to creative theatre makers being able to put their show on anywhere, enabling a piece of woodland to work as a functional venue, or we're taking a derelict office block and turning it into an immersive experience. But I can't predict the future, but I'm hoping that we'll see just a sea change in every element of the industry, where no one feels that they can shirk the responsibility of ignoring what we as a species are doing to the planet. One key thing that crystallised our role within the climate crisis for me was the work that Charcoalblue have done with We Are Sail, and through them we've gone through carbon literacy training, and we've just gained a much clearer picture of exactly where we lie in the industry and how we're positioned to hopefully make a difference. I think we all sort of owe them a debt of gratitude in that it's opened our eyes to exactly how responsible we are, but also the fact that we're not powerless. We're not just screaming against the wind. We can make a difference, and that's something we're all actively trying to pursue now.
In the near future, what I hope is that organisations can review their own internal strategies and then to make strategic action about how to improve that. Most creative arts companies already have a lot of environmental policies in place, but I think even if just checking those policies, setting an annual or biannual review date just to come back, just confirm what's happening, what is everyone else doing, where are we, and how can we keep moving this forward. For me, the conversation just needs to stay alive. We just need to keep going and to just move everything forward, and stop talking and start to take action about what it is that we will do, so we can find a really positive future. Ultimately, we're storytellers, and this is the story of our generation. And so in the future, we need to be able to tell the story in a really positive and proactive way.